Hello, this is David Webb, and tonight I'm going to make a video of Game 8 in the US-UK Internet Scrabble Tournament being run in 2007, which is the fourth such tournament. The US have already won this year's tournament, having established a 6-1 lead in the best of 9 series, but all 9 games are being played to determine the margin of victory. Tonight's game is between Jason Katz-Brown of the United States and Helen Gibson of the UK. And we are off, and it's Jason to play first. And he has got a mixture of high-scoring tiles with the J, K, P and V. He also has a couple of vowels, so he should be able to score reasonably well. One possibility would be to play a joke across here, J-O-K-E. That would score 30 points. It would leave the P-V combination, which is not a good combination of letters to have, but it's a good score, and Jason plays it. One of the railbirds has suggested Cop G for Jason's opening move, which may have been better. Now, Helen has a bingo on her rack. It's been pointed out that she can play overbite down here. Let's see if she'll spot it. This looks a promising set of letters, but I can't see any other bingos apart from overbite, and Helen plays it. And back with Jason. He's got a reasonable rack, but I can't see a bingo there. But what he does have is a 4-timer, which is a word that spans 2 double word squares. And that would score 48 points, which would be a nice score. And it would also play off 6 tiles. And his rack doesn't have any great leaves, so it wouldn't be damaging his rack to play off 6 tiles, certainly not with a score of 48 points. But it's not an easy word to be sure of. One possibility he may play, as has been pointed out by one of our railbirds, is Valia across here, which scores a triple word score, and also denies both of these triple word squares from Helen. Trivia would certainly be a better play, simply from the point of view of scoring a lot more points. It would score 4 times rather than 3 times the value of the tiles. Let's see how many people are watching this game. We've got 40 people in attendance tonight. Jason is taking his time over this move, and he plays Valia. Helen has a nice rack, but no obvious bingos. But she should be able to score well and leave herself with a decent rack leave. Well, she nearly has donatory, but the R in overbite is 1 square short of where it needs to be. And Helen scores 37 points for Davy, which is a great score. And Buways has whispered, "Too bad donatory didn't fit." And this is where it could have fitted, if only the R was 1 square further to the right. Jason is 41 points behind. He doesn't have a bingo on his rack. He could, however, play jip down here, creating the word jokey as well. It would leave him with EIOT, which is a slight preponderance of vowels in his rack leave. But certainly the G and the Y are not bingo-y tiles, so Jason would be looking to get rid of those two tiles if he can. Perhaps a play of Goy, leaving EIPT, would be the best in terms of rack leave, but you always need to balance rack leave with score. And that really is the essence of Scrabble strategy. For most of the game, it is all about rack leave and score. And in order to compare two moves, you compare the scores and you adjust the scores for the rack leave, or you take an intuitive or instinctive view as to which combination of score and rack leave is the winninger or the winningest combination. And that is absolutely what top Scrabble players do all the time. One interesting move that's been suggested is Pi-oi across here, putting the P on this triple letter square and the Y underneath JA to create J. That would be a nice play, leaving GET. Well, Helen plays Pokey, which is good. It leaves EIT, which is a decent rack leave. And Jason has a bingo on his rack. He has Intuate across here, which is a very nice play. It opens up the triple word square line, and I believe Intuate takes a D and an S after it. And it's also been pointed out that Jason could have played Anchoret across here. But Helen has, Jason's played Intuate and Helen has come straight back with Frailty, which is a nice play from Helen, giving her a 2-point lead. I'm sorry, it was Helen who played Intuate and Jason who has immediately played Frailty, and we're back with Helen. One possibility that's been suggested is Penance down here, but that isn't a great score, and I'm sure Helen will be looking for something better than that. Whether there is something better than that is another matter. She will also be looking to resolve the duplicate N on her rack. The GN is a useful combination because with an I she would have the ing suffix, which appears in a lot of bingos. But she won't be hanging on to the G just because she's got an N. One nice word that somebody's pointed out is ganja down here. Sorts out the duplicate N, gets rid of the G, but it leaves the C and the P on her rack. And I think Helen would, or any Scrabble player would ideally be wanting to leave just one high-scoring tile on their rack and not two. And the C and the P together are not a great combination. Certainly not as good as CH, for example. And our railbirds are debating the merits of retaining PENC as a rack leave, which is what would happen were Helen to play ganja. This is a tricky spot that Helen's in. There's no obvious best play. And what we do have is a couple of hotspots in the form of triple letter squares, which the P could be placed on. But the problem is that Helen can't score by putting the P on this triple letter square and playing a 5-letter word across to the double word square. I think if such a word was playable, Helen would have played it. And the problem with using either of these squares is really, in terms of leaving a decent rack leave. Probably the best rack leave would be by playing a word like pang, but there are not many opportunities for playing pang on this board. And Helen plays Pangene for 24, opening up the triple word square line down here. Jason does not have a pleasant rack. He's got a duplicate I and a duplicate R and the U. And it's difficult to play a word which uses up the U, I and R, but Jason's found one. He's played Rimu for 29 points. Good play, Jason. And Helen has picked up a blank, the first blank of the game. And I'm sure she will be hoping to bingo with this rack. Let's see how long it takes our railbirds to spot a playable bingo. Well, Helen has got secedes, S-E-C-E-D-E-S, but let's check that intuate takes an S, and it does. Looks like I'm shouting. Let's see if that suggestion gets shot down in flames, or whether there's anything obviously better. And while we're at it, let's check if intuated is good, as I suggested earlier that I thought it might be. We can see down there that intuated is good. Magic Hour has suggested seed case as being a playable word. That would be playable down here. And that would be better than secedes. Well, actually, secedes and intuated works better than secedes and intuates. And the advantage of secedes and intuated is that it hits the double word square down here. I see Sidewinder has suggested ecdices, but I don't think that's preferable to secedes and intuated. And Rurabinski has suggested deselects down here, which goes through 2 letters, and that would be quite an impressive play. 9-letter words are quite rare in Scrabble, so many top players do not bother learning them. So it's all the more impressive when a 9-letter word is played, particularly in this instance one that goes through 2 disconnected letters. I wonder what options Helen is weighing up in her mind. Excellent. Good play, Helen. Secedes and intuated. Jason has picked up a couple of power tiles in the Z and the X. And he can play exist across here, putting the X on the double letter square, and that would be a terrific play, scoring almost as much as a bingo. So Jason's deficit of 84 points is likely to shrink dramatically with his next play. The other possibility in the same spot is being suggested is Zest, Z-E-S-T. That does, however, keep the duplicate I. But what a play like Zest would do is retain the X for this triple letter square here. So he would have, for example, next go, XI across here. And that's probably worth retaining the X and I to take advantage of, so perhaps Zest is the optimal move on this board. Tricky one. Well, it's been suggested that maybe playing XI now underneath the O of Intuited would be a good play. But Jason goes for the points, and he takes 60 points by playing Exist. And Helen has drawn the second blank. But it doesn't look like she's got a bingo on this rack. The W and the U are an awful combination to have in terms of bingos. Jason is just 24 points behind now. One suggestion is that Helen could play a W across here, and that would leave blank T IUM on her rack, and a word ending IUM could play down here. Now, although IUM is a common suffix, it doesn't appear in a huge number of words. It's common as in well known because it appears in a lot of chemical elements, but it simply doesn't feature in as many words as the suffix ing, for example. So one should be wary of retaining IUM in the belief that it is a good leave. I mean, it isn't. It's just not. It's not a disaster. Well, that's the play Helen makes. AW. It does, of course, deny the hotspot under the O of Intuited to Jason. Now, Jason has a super rack, and he gets 59 points for Bizone and takes the lead. He's 14 points ahead. Helen, however, has the blank, but she doesn't have a bingo on her rack. But given that she has the blank and the board's fairly open, she's in a good position to retake the lead, with a little bit of luck from the tile gods. The board looks fairly open, but it's not hugely open, and one problem that should be mentioned, which one of our railbirds, Chris Hawkins, Chalky, has pointed out, is if you look at the remaining letters, there are no E's. All the E's have been played, and E's feature in a lot of bingos. Bingo lanes open at the moment include this one down here, down here, down here onto the E, down here, and that, I think, is about it. So we're looking at 4 vertical bingo lanes and no horizontal bingo lanes. So there are lanes open, but it's not a wonderland of opportunity. Given that Helen is only 4 points behind, she doesn't need a bingo, although a bingo would probably secure a win for her. A play of Mutt down here, 22 points, would leave a reasonable leave of IG blank. None of the bingo lanes allow a word ending ing, but it's still a reasonable leave. Well, this game is tantalizingly poised with just a 4-point difference. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out. There are no E's left, but there are a profusion of A's and O's, 4 of each, and we've also got the Q to come, which could cause problems or may not, depending on whether the player has either of the 2 remaining U's to go with it. Well, Helen plays Gum for 27, leaving her with a reasonable rack leave of TTI blank. There are 2 T's left, and were she to pick one of them, that would give her 3 T's, which would not be good. And Jason plays pinfold for 26. And Helen draws the cue. She can certainly play the cue, it's not going to be a problem. And she can play it quite nicely down here for 38 points. And I would expect Helen to make that play. It would leave a terrific rack leave of INT blank, and it would give her a healthy 30+ point lead. And there are only 11 tiles left in the bag. And that's the play. And Winchelsea, who is Ed Martin, has mentioned that the unseen tiles go excellently with INT blank, so we'll be very interested to see if Helen can conjure up a bingo in her remaining moves. Pinfold has opened a couple of floaters up for an 8-letter bingo, and we've still got this bingo lane open down here. Back with Jason, he is 35 points behind. He could play a move like Horde down here for 30 points, which would bring him back in contention. He's not to know that Helen has the blank, but Horde would simply draw him close to Helen, then it would be Helen's go. So Helen certainly has got the advantage, the impetus at the moment. One of our railbirds has suggested playing RAHED down here to meet the swift rejoinder from Seemashar of No E Fool. Easy to be brutal when you're on the end of a keyboard. Well, Jason can't really like the position he's in, but there's not very much he can do about it. I can't see anything better than Horde down the right hand column. Although it would leave him with no vowels, there are 8 vowels left plus the blank from his point of view. So he would expect to replenish his rack with at least 1 vowel. Hodja has been suggested down here. It would score well, 28 points, but the rack leave of ALRR is pretty awful, as our railbirds are pointing out. Jason is certainly not out of this game, but he is going to be looking at the remaining tiles, thinking, well, Helen's got a pretty good shout of a bingo next go. And a play of Horde would do nothing to close down the bingo lanes that are open, and in fact it would open up a new bingo lane across there. But since he's behind, it's hardly in his interests to shut down bingo lanes. Unfortunately, his rack is not very bingo friendly, and with no ease in the bag, he can't really expect to improve to a bingo. Let's see how many people are enjoying the action. 83 people now. The US has won this match. It's a best of 9, and the US have a 6-1 lead, so the US have won the tournament, but all 9 games are being played to determine the margin of victory. It's also a showcase for Scrabble. It gives people the opportunity to observe the games and to comment while the game is being played, which is another reason for playing all 9 games. Jason is certainly taking his time over this move, and the railbirds seem to have got a little bored of this move. There don't seem to be too many opportunities to think about. and are exchanging punctuation remarks. Has Jason spotted something that we haven't? Oh, Magic Hour has said maybe Jason has nodded off. Well, this is the excitement that Scrabble generates at the highest level. Well, if Jason has nodded off, it's going to be a very long last 6 minutes. Right, the clocks have stopped ticking down, so... and that says that Helen has lost contact or quit. Gosh. Let's see if our tournament director is in attendance. That's Wayne Kelly. And he isn't. Yes, he is. Wakey wakey. I wonder if his anxiety levels are rising. The tournament director's had nothing to do in the first 4 years of this tournament, but there will inevitably be a first time. Well, all our concerns were with Jason, who appeared to have nodded off, but then... Helen has rejoined us. Let's see if the game will restart. It has restarted. Jason is still contemplating his rack. On the one hand, one's tempted to say that we're all on tenterhooks, but we're not. It is a close game. And that's an interesting play. Jason plays Rodora, which is a bold, open move. It opens up a triple. It opens up this triple line across here. And if Helen doesn't take it, it's open to Jason. And if Helen does take it, without playing a bingo, or even with playing a bingo, it would in turn open up a bingo lane across here for Jason. So an interesting play by Jason. I don't know if it's better than Horde, but it may be. But does Helen have a bingo on her rack? Certainly the duplicate U would suggest that she doesn't. If there was a floating E or D on the board, she'd have unsuited. And there is a bingo. Ed Martin has suggested sun suit down here, and that's a terrific play. So there's Ed's suggestion of sunsuit. We've also got Sidewinder's suggestion of subunit, both in the same spot. But will Helen see them? And one thing Helen may be thinking about, well, I'm sure she's had a look at the remaining tiles from her point of view, and she will see from that Jason could play Wuraris through here. And if Jason did play Wuraris, then he would certainly score enough to win the game, even if Helen did play subunit or sunsuit down here. I think if Helen does see either of those bingos, she will play it, because she can't guarantee a win by blocking the Wuraris play. They're not easy bingos to see at all. And Helen plays it. Well done, Helen. Nice one. The bag is now empty. Helen's got AO on her rack, and Jason has got the rack we see at the top of the screen. He has to bingo to win. Well, if there was a floating O or a U in the right place, Jason would have Wuralis, but there are no O's and U's in the right place. Is there anything else? Well, Jason has decided that there isn't. We certainly didn't see anything. It is 6-2 now to the US. And Helen plays out with oath. Ed's comment, Winchelsea's comment that is looks like this game has been played well by both players. I think I would agree with that. No obvious errors, certainly no missed bingos that we've seen. And Helen wins the game 493 to 428. Right, let's take a quick look at this game. Gosh. The analysis tells us that Suarez, by the analysis I mean that when you enter this this functionality of ISC in terms of examining a game, it'll point out at the beginning any invalid words, and it's saying that Suarez is invalid. I didn't realise that, and I don't think any of our railbirds did either. In fact, Suarez looks good to me. I'm just going to have a quick look in the paper version of the word list. Yep, Suarez was a phony, so sort of well done for getting away with it, but bad job, Helen, in not challenging that. Right, Jason is clearly doing the same as we're about to do, which is looking through the game. He's noticing that he missed Kopji and Previa. So he's presumably about to find out that he played the phony Suarez. Anyway, let's go ahead and analyse this game. There is Kopji. And yep, I think that definitely would have been the better play. Overbite was the only bingo for Helen there. Well, Intuate and Anchorette we spotted. We didn't spot Cenotaph. Egdices was superior to Secedes because it put the C on the triple letter square. Pooh is clearly doing the same as Jason and we are doing by going through the analysis. The suggestions that are being made on the right hand side of the screen are simply the highest scoring suggestions. Actually, they're not just the highest scoring, because you can see that these aren't in purely numerical order, but they're certainly not the best options. There's some sort of algorithm going on which generates these suggestions, but further analysis using a different program would be needed to ascertain the best play. Gosh, we were criticising a guy earlier for suggesting Rard, and we thought that he was thinking about playing it here. In fact, Rard was playable across here, so that was actually a good suggestion. Sunsuit and Subunit were the only two bingos for Helen's rack there. And that's the end of the game, so well done to Jason and Helen. No missed bingos. High quality game. Well done to Helen for winning. Both players scored over 400 points, so a high scoring game. I hope you've enjoyed watching this video. And that's all for now. Okay, see you later.